Right, hello people. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to try to show you how to change the bezel on one of these Garmin Forerunner 45 watches, or other Forerunner watches are actually very similar. So the observant amongst you might, oh, look at my cut finger. The observant amongst you might notice that this is actually wired together. And the reason for that, let me just put the phone down a second. While I open a new bezel that I ordered that has arrived. Right, if you have a look here, this is a replacement Forerunner 45 bezel. Now these are available on eBay for roughly about £20. But I bought this one off of AliExpress and it came direct from China, and it only cost me £8, just over £8, including shipping, which is, you know, fairly remarkable. But this is what happens if I can find just a pointer. Hang on a second. So if you have a look here, you'll see that the bezel has got a couple of little tags on it, and those tags have got a little threaded insert. So what happens here, if you look on the back of the Forerunner, you'll see that there are screws. There are two little screws, and what happens is if you buy a replacement strap, which I did in this case, and you try to get these screws out, what it does is it actually snaps the little bezel off. And I'll pause the video in a moment, and I'll remove the the wire supports that I've put on this in a second, and I'll show you where it's actually snapped off. But you would think, oh yeah, once the bezel's broken, that's a throwaway job. But like I say, you can get these from from eBay or AliExpress for almost no money at all. But what you have to do is you've got to take the obviously you've got to take the watch apart, and that involves using a heat gun or a hairdryer, which is what I'm going to attempt to show you in a minute. Just before I do, and I need to get myself set up in here. So at the moment I'm absolutely, this is my study. I'm absolutely packed with junk. I'm like a hoarder. So I need to clear my desk and get my little vise out. But I wanted to just, first of all, just to say a little note about this little wire support that I've put on here. So all I've done here is taken a couple of pieces of wire, and I've got sort of a reel of wire in the garage. It's a reel of wire that actually came from my grandfather about 25 years ago, and he was going, my dad's dad, and he was going through his toolbox in London, before he died or whatever, and he was he found a reel of this old baling wire, and I must go and get it. I'll go and get it, and I'll show you in a minute. And it was on an old wooden reel, so God knows how old it was. And he said to me, I would only be about 8 or 9 years old, but he said to me, look, here's some really useful wire. You in the future you won't be able to buy this kind of stuff. I took it from the factory I used to work in the war, where I was. He worked on, what did he do? He worked on Wellington bombers at Brooklands. The Brooklands circuit. That was a big plane manufacturing thing there, and he worked there doing something on some kind of engineering job on Wellington bombers. But anyway, he had a reel of wire on a wooden you know, on a wooden spool that I've used so many times over the last, like, you know, 30 years. And I'm nearly out of wire now, unfortunately. But if you don't have, you know, a granddad in the 1970s that you can get, you know, this kind of wire from, I suppose you could get it on eBay. But you see, so all I did here, when this strap fell off and one of these lugs fell off, which I will stop the video and I'll dismantle this and I'll show you in a second, is I didn't even drill holes here. I just poked holes through the old rubber strap, and I just put some wire over it, and you know, I just sort of, you know, twisted it together and snapped it off, and that's lasted me a couple of weeks now, because the bezel on the back is, you know, the bit that does your heart rate is actually stood off a bit. So, you know, this still goes on my wrist, and this is still usable at the moment. You know, I've used it for a couple of weeks now, and you know, at least 2 park runs and 1 club session, which really does show, I think, what you can do if if you're desperate, or, you know, in my case, you're desperately tight and you never like throwing stuff away. But however, like I say, that, you know, at last, it did take a couple of weeks for small Chinese children to make this, and them to, you know, send this out, like I say, from AliExpress. But now I've got it, I can start dismantling this, and I'll show you where the actual bezel broke off so that you can see. So I'm just going to bake this now. I'll get sorted out with a little vise in here and stuff, and I'll cut this bezel, and then I'll begin to show you how, you know, how you can, hopefully with a heat gun or whatever, how you can swap these around and, you know, repair your Forerunner 45. So anyway, yeah, back in a second. Right then, I've got my little vise set up in my office now, and I know a little joke about this, so here goes. I'm using my little vice because my biggest vice is gambling. My biggest vice is gambling. Tough crowd. It's the only vice joke I know, which I think I got from Viz in the 1990s. But anyway, there you go. So I've got the watch held in the little vice now, and here's the replacement strap, by the way. And again, you can get decent Garmin replacement straps for literally no money at all on sort of Fleabay. And that's what I was originally trying to do. So let me just cut this wire structure off, and then I can just quickly show you the broken tags or lugs, or whatever you want to call them. And then we can set about with a hairdryer. I think I'm going to use a hairdryer rather than a heat gun, because I have a heat gun, but heat guns can be incredibly fierce, and it's you know, really easy just to end up with a globular mess in the middle of the desk, and it's much harder to do that with just an old one of Michelle's hair dryers that I sort of felched into the garage many years ago. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut the silly wire structure off now, and then I'll show you the lugs. So just 1 second while I do that. Right then, just back to it very quickly here before I have to stop this, because I can hear the oven pinging with dinner in it. So just a couple of things. Firstly, tools. What tools am I using? A scalpel, which I take the end off or the plastic cap off in a minute. I don't know if you can see here, but there's a little, if I can get it to focus, you see the little gap in between the top bezel and the base. That's what we're going to be exploiting in a minute, and I'm going to use the scalpel just to sort of I'm going to heat it with Michelle's mysteriously disappearing hairdryer, like I said, and then I'm just going to tweak that little gap there with the scalpel, and then following probably with one of these. I mean, these are really good tools. If you know, you can get these on Fleabay, but if you've ever got to take apart say a dash of a car or whatever, you know, get yourself some of these sort of plastic tools, because they're really, I mean, it's a little bit worn on the end there now, but they're brilliant for just getting, you know, very small gaps between sort of delicate plastic parts apart without you know, without damaging them. There you go. Just shows I wasn't making it up. There you go. The, you know, wooden wheel with, you know, wire from my granddad. I listened back to the video I did a minute ago, and I think I said 25 years ago. That would have been 50 years ago. He gave me this. You know, that would have been, you know, in true Mudge fashion, it would have been felched from, you know, where he was working. So this would have, you know, come from the, you know, the Vickers Wellington factory in, you know, in Weybridge or whatever, you know, in the 30s or the 40s, or, you know, God knows who. So yeah, replacement strap. What else do I need to say before? Oh yeah, look here. Where I had that held together with, let's get it to focus, with the, you know, the wire that I've just cut off, I glued it. And what I'm not sponsored by these guys, by the way, but this stuff, I saw an advert years ago, and it was you know, an advert of a bloke taking a wooden post and then gluing a like a latch, a garden latch to it, and, you know, a big gorilla turns up and gives him this stuff, and I, you know, I thought, yeah, you know, whatever, just marketing, you know, BS or whatever. And but I've come to use this stuff over the years, and it's just remarkable, particularly the clear stuff. And it's brilliant on things like this, where in this case I had this clamped in a, you know, in a vise overnight, and if you can get a layer of that in and you can clamp it up, then it will glue. It's just about anything. You know, it's brilliant on sort of soles of trainers. You know, I've glued all sorts of ABS shiny plastic bits that, you know, shouldn't glue, you know, by all rights. And there's I mean, I read something on Wikipedia about this stuff, and I won't bore you with the chemistry, but there's something remarkable about that. So if you've got anything, particularly plastic, and you can clamp it, so what I'm going to have to do in a minute is I'm going to have to break that glue bond, which is a bit of a shame because it's actually nice and together now. But, you know, as you can see here, the strap is falling apart, so I really do need to change this strap. So in a minute I'm going to see if I can prop this camera up, and you know, we'll warm this up and we'll start to get it apart, and see if we can't replace the bezel. Don't forget to turn it off, by the way, when you're doing these things, otherwise you're just, you know, you're gonna, you know, destroy the electronics. I mean, this is still on at the moment, so in a minute I'll turn it off, and I've got a holder for the camera, and I'll hold the camera, and we'll get a you know, Michelle's hairdryer on it, and we'll get this apart. But anyway, got to go because I can hear dinner beeping. Back in a sec. All right, here we are then. So I've got the watch in my vise, I've got the camera in my little support thingy. It is bouncing about a bit, I see, but I'm never going to be a professional YouTuber, by the way. I'm only just doing these to, you know, because my main motivation is I just hate throwing stuff out, and I just hate this society we're in where people just, you know, bin stuff before repairing it. And you know, I've always tried to repair everything, you know, from cars to washing machines to watches to shoes. And you know, I don't know whether that just comes from, I don't know, being poor when we were younger, or, you know, or bloody mindedness. But I think we're all just going to have to go back to this. We're all going to have to you know, stop buying crap and, you know, try to fix it. Don't get me going about built-in obsolescence, because you know, it's something that makes me makes me really angry. And I know there's a lot of this, what they call right to repair stuff, coming in from the States. Actually, it was a thing in the States, and it's beginning to, I think it's a thing in the EU, in Europe, or it soon will be, to make manufacturers produce things so they can actually be repaired. And I just think it, you know, for the environment, everything else, it just makes so much sense. And just on that, while I'm ranting about a right to repair, I read an article really, and it recently, and it made me really, really angry. And it was about washing machines. I mean, the majority of washing machines are all just a single manufacturer now, you know, whether they're AEG or Candy or Indeset, it's the same manufacturer. They just sort of badge engineer them. And what they've done is they've made the drums on washing. There's a couple of things that go on washing machines. It's either the electronics or the bearing in the drum, the front and the back bearings in the drum. And they've made it now in the Western world that the can you see me? I'm here. That you can't. That they've sealed the drums to stop people getting at the bearings and fixing the bearings. And I read that the very same models that they produce, you know, for Asia, you know, particularly like India or whatever, they haven't sealed the drums. They've made it so that you can, you know, you can get at the bearings and you can change the bearings really quickly. And the reason they've done that in Southeast Asia and they haven't done it in Europe on the same models, you know, is because we're stupid, because they know that people can't afford to, you know, just keep buying new white goods over there. So that if they sealed the drums, people just wouldn't buy their washing machines. And then they look at Europe and they think, well, you know, we just, you know, we've got more money than sense, you know, let's seal the drums. So they make it so you can't change the bearings. And then you think, oh, okay, well, I'll buy a new drum. Well, funnily enough, you know, the drum is almost the same cost as a new washing machine, you know, and they're all like a price cartel and they're all the same cost or whatever. And they just, you know, mean that, you know, every 2.5 years or whatever, you've got to bin the washing machine and buy a new one. And it doesn't need to be like that, because it's just the bearing, you know, that one day, you know, I might do a video of me, you know, slicing open a, you know, drum of a washing machine and showing how it can be resealed. But, you know, I've read people that saying, well, they've just made it impossible. And anyway, that's why I fix stuff, the short version. And yeah, it makes me so angry. So, right, let's get on with this then. So I've turned the watch off. So I'm just going to heat it now with this hairdryer. And again, the reason I'm using a hairdryer and not a hot air gun is if you use a hot air gun, you can destroy something like this, you know, in a few seconds if you're stupid. And, you know, I have done that. I am, you know, guilty of doing that, you know, or you can just sort of fry the electronics. If you're using a hairdryer, it's actually really difficult to destroy something like this and fry the electronics. So what I'm going to do now is warm this up, and then I'm going to prise it apart with this scalpel and possibly the, you know, the little, you know, dashboard tool. And I'm going to eat my words, because this is all going to melt and be, you know, horrible or whatever. But, you know, I don't think so. So just bear with me a minute while I just warm it up. Don't know if you can hear that. It's just a normal sort of mid-range setting on, you know, Michelle's hairdryer. So, you know, here goes. Oh, blew everything off the desk. Well, here goes then. That should be hot enough. It certainly feels hot enough. So let's just get the little scalpel in now and see if I can't just ease this apart, and then get the, you know, the better tooling to do it a bit more. No, that is still going to need some heat. That is not showing any signs of wanting to come apart. So let's let me just give it some more heat. Should have done it now. You know, it does take a little bit of time to the, you know, to get a sort of heat soak or whatever. There you go. Can you see that now? That blade has gone in and it's apart. There you go. Lovely. They are. That's what they that's what they don't want you doing, and it is that simple. So right, I'm just going to have a little examination of this, and then I'll come back and show you what I find. So what I found, and I haven't done this before, but if you notice here, there are two tiny little screws here and here. So I'm just, because the end of this scalpel has been snapped off, I'm going to try to do this with, yes, there you go, just with the end of the scalpel. So there's one there, you see that screws out loose now, it's just sitting there. And we'll do the other one there as well. I've got a terrible cold, by the way, but you know, who hasn't at the moment? Right, so in theory now, this should just drop out. We make sure we don't lose these screws. In fact, let me just retrieve these screws first, so they don't ping them all over the bench. So there you go, screws out, and there you go, electronics out. So we've got a single connector there to the electronics, which I'm going to need to just examine and see how it's held together, and then after that I'll come back to you. Okay, here's what I discovered then. If you look at the replacement bezel here from AliExpress, you'll see that this lead here is complete, and then there's a little connector on the end here, which is the type of connector that should just push onto the board. So if I have a look at this here, so here in theory, oh, where's my blade gone? Hang on. So there you go, back in the room. The reason my blade dropped out is because I was using it as a little screwdriver. I mean, which is you know, does show you know, I've got mini screwdrivers. Use the right part. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use this scalpel to ease this connector off the board. There you go. Did you see that come off? So it's as simple as that. So what we'll do now is I'll just disassemble the strap here, and then we'll put it in the new bezel, and we'll put it back together, and I'll show you how I'll put it back together. So bear with me a sec. Okay, I'm going to try to bring it back in shot now. So there you go, there's the watch, and here's the new bezel. So this connector in theory should only go on one way. And it should be simple enough. It should just be a matter of just lining it up and then pushing it on. So I'm going to line it up here, a little bit fiddly, and I'm going to clip it on, and it should just all come together with a nice happy resounding click. A nice happy resounding click when it goes together. There it is. There you go. Oh, I heard the click anyway. I'm sure you didn't hear the click, but there you go. So that is the worst part of the job, you know. So all I've got to do now is take the watch strap apart, which I will show you in a second, and then just put it all back together, and we're away. I mean, if I was going to rate this in sort of difficulty of you know, having done lots of iPhones, you know, batteries and stuff in the past, and they tell you, oh, this stuff's impossible, you can't do it. Well, you can. You know, I mean, the hardest thing I ever found were earbuds trying to take earbuds apart, which Apple absolutely engineer never to come apart. And you can get them apart, but trying to replace the battery and put them back together, I've seen people on the internet do it, but it's really impossible. I'd put that maybe a 9 out of 10. Changing a battery in an iPhone, there's plenty of people down the high street will do that. I put that maybe a 6 out of 10. Getting this apart and changing the electronics, which you saw me do there. What's that? 3 out of 10. Hairdryer and a scalpel. So I mean, famous last words. But all I've got to do now is take the. In fact, I don't need to put the new strap on. What I'm on about, I've got a new strap. So my new strap is here. And my old strap, which I was going to pull all the glue apart and take it apart, but I don't need to because it's crap anyway, isn't it? So all I need to do is attach this bezel on now, and as you can see, hopefully, bezel, strap, it goes in there, and you've got 2 little screws at the back each side, which I will do one side now, and then I'll come back to you and then just show you me doing it. There is no trick to this, by the way. I've just found out. So you take strap and you take bezel and you put it in, and then listen. Probably didn't hear that, but it just clicks together, and then you just need 2 of the new screws. Jason, 2 of the new screws, which I've got here. And you need to put them screws in, and then just need to reassemble. So let me just do a couple, and then I'll show you. All right, here you go. I'm back. I've gone and got my watchmaker's screwdriver set, because you really shouldn't be using the edge of a scalpel. I mean, I've used kitchen knives and all sorts. In fact, most of the kitchen knives are in the garage. But there you go. You see, I put one in, and it's just a matter of. They are a little tricky to put in because there is a little bit of like webbing underneath the screws on the new strap that binds the screws really tight, and that will be like a waterproofing thing, I would think, or just the way they make it. So there you go. That's that one done. And that's all nice and tight. I will just quickly do the other one, and then I'll come back. Just to say, with this watch strap though, there were 6 screws that came with this watch strap, and I wondered why it had 6 screws with it. And the reason it had 6 screws is that they are so fiddly. You do end up dropping them on the floor or whatever. So I think thank you Garmin for providing all 6 screws. Okay, I'll just put the other side on, and then I'll be back. So there you go, all done. If you've got a relatively new one of these, and you can just buy a strap and then screw a new strap on, that's absolutely fine. But with me, and I've read lots of other people say it on the interweb as well, is that after a while the screw here and the insert become one, and the moment you try to unscrew it, then it snaps the bezel. I will show you the broken bezel in a minute. I don't think I've shown it to you, but I will show it to you in a minute when I've pulled that apart. But so really, yeah, all I've got to do now is just gently put it back together and screw it back together. So bear with me, I'll do that, and I'll show me doing that, and then we'll glue it back. So there we go again. So just putting these tiny little screws back. Screwdrivers become magnetic. You probably know that after time. And you can lose little screws, and I promise you, I haven't just, there you go, back, I haven't just crawled around the floor to find these screws, by the way. I really didn't drop them, I dropped them. So there you are. So that's all back. The only other thing to say, it's a bit Frankenstein, but it came to life halfway through the surgery, and then it's like it woke up from its anaesthetic early, So I really ought to just turn it off again before I glue it. But literally the only thing I need to do now is glue this back on, and I will just pause it and I'll go and get my glue and I'll show you me doing that. Okay, back again. Trusty Gorilla glue I'm about to use, and a little pointy brush, a little pointy craft brush. You know, I buy these in the, you know, in the billions or whatever. This one I've just taken a pair of scissors to you know, to sharpen the edge up. Yeah, and like I say, trusty Gorilla Glue, which I just think is the most wonderful thing ever invented. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put a little bead of this very, very carefully around the bezel, and then we're going to clamp it up. So let me just add some glue, probably do it off camera, and then we'll go from there. So there you go, really didn't need a lot of that. If you can see, there's just a little bead of it around there. So what I should just be able to do is just put this back into place now. I mean, it will only go one way. Just put it, ease it back together. There you go. Did you hear that? Did you hear the click? Did you hear the click? Did you hear the click? It's got a, you know, it's got a little click to it. You know, Garmin made these really well. Oh, that's come apart. Didn't go that well. So I'm just going to clean this up, and then I'm just going to put a little clamp on it, and I'm going to show you the clamp I use, and you know, and you can go and buy one similar. So let me just clean this up. There you go. So I wiped the glue residue off of that. One other reason I sound like a salesman for Gorilla Glue, but I'm really not. But one of the reasons I use that clear stuff is if you miss a bit, it doesn't leave an ugly residue. And the original stuff was like a sort of a beige colour or whatever, and it does expand. I mean, partly how it works is it expands as it sets, and it gets into the sort of molecular structure or whatever of whatever you're putting together. So it does expand, and you know, often you get sort of an oozing out sort of residue, or a tiny little bit anyway, if you don't wipe it off properly. But I found if you use the clear stuff, then you know, you can hardly even notice it. So what I'm going to use now is one of these. These are woodworking clamps, but, you know, and I've got probably 18 of these in the workshop. You know, this one, you know, it's very heavily used. These get used to clamp all sorts, and I'm just using a you know, a microfiber cloth, you know, another, you know, greatest invention of our times or whatever. And the great thing about these woodworking clamps is if you really can feel how tight you're putting things, and they've got like a little ratchet on them, you know, and you can, you know, that's tight, but that's not, you know, that's not offensively tight. And if I look around the edges, you won't be able to see this on the camera, but if I look around the edges, I can see that bezel is a little bit of glue residue there. I can see that bezel is 100% down and glued. Is it down this side here? Yeah, it did. When it clicked in, it really did fully. Yeah, it fully did. So what I should do now is I'll leave that. I might just try a little bit tighter, but I will leave that 24 hours now. And then I'll show you it done, and you know, all working. So the only other thing I want to do is just pull the bezel off the old one and show you where they break. So 1 second. So look here. I mean, it's impossible to, you know, this is the side that I haven't played with, but it's impossible to unscrew this. It just won't. It won't unscrew because the, you know, the screws in the insert have, you know, just become one, and no matter how hard you push with a decent screwdriver, you just simply can't get them apart without snapping the bezel. So yeah, I don't know if you see that. I mean, look at that. I mean, that is disgusting. Look, it's just, I mean, it's not only full of you know, manky sweat from a number of years. You know, the plastic that holds the, you know, the metal bits is gone. And if you have a look here, if you can see it, I don't know if you can focus on that, but you'll see the little inserts there are. So literally, if you what are these? Forerunner 45 is, you know, a few years old. You literally can't change the strap, so you do need to change the bezel. So that's it. I'm never going to be doing millions of these videos. I'm never going to be a YouTuber by living, but I am going to do a few, you know, just when I repair things, because I just want to encourage other people to you know, fix things rather than just dump them. And like I say, in this case, the total cost of, you know, £8 for a bezel, and what the strap was, you know, I mean, there's loads of these out there on eBay. I think, you know, paid a £5 for it or something for a new strap or whatever. You know, I mean, you know, the alternative is to go out and spend hundreds of, you know, pounds on a replacement watch. But I mean, I like this watch. You know, it's got nice big chunky buttons. You know, it's really usable. It's done me really well. So you know, why not repair? You know. And I have to say, Garmin, they have made this relatively repairable. Whether the newer models and stuff are, you know, as repairable, I don't know. But certainly this Forerunner 45, there you go. All good, all done. Bye. So, final bit then, next day. Here we are. Been clamped overnight. Unclamp it. Love these little woodwork clamps. They're fantastic. Unwrap it like the little parcel it is, and there you go. It's beautiful. You probably can't see that there, but that's, you know, that's completely and utterly clamped up, and, you know, it's usable, fixed. There you are. So if you want to take your Forerunner 45 and change the strap, or, you know, or particularly change the bezel rather than throwing it in the bin and, you know, spending hundreds of quid on a new one, you know, that's a quick and easy way to do it. Okay, thank you, bye.